Okay. So,
Okay.
First of all, this is Brian Harris with the Independent Black Voters. Our vote is not free. As we start our series of knowing your candidates, folks, this is a critical election that's coming on. It's a mid-year election, and many times low voter turnout or apathy results in some candidates that end up winning that not necessarily have the same values and beliefs that we do. So we've started our series. We've had candidates come on today. I have two people here, and I first want in Michael Holmes. He is part of the Independent Black Voters on Facebook. How you doing, Michael?
Good afternoon to both of you. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Thanks. And now we have Aaron Ford, who is right now the existing. Hold on, let me. I'm going to mess it up again. Is Aaron Ford, who is our general
Attorney General.
Huh? Attorney General. I was messing that up. I knew I was going to mess it up. Sorry. He's our Attorney General. He was elected. And you know, the thing about it, a lot of times as Black folks, just as I had a mind melt here, don't really know what the Attorney General does. And one of the things that we want to do is enlighten the people in our community about what is the role, who is the Attorney General as a person, what is the role of the Attorney General, what he's done now, and why it is so important from a day-to-day aspect for us to have the right person in the position of Attorney General. So without any further ado, first, Brother Ford, Attorney General Ford, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come out and talk to us.
Definitely my pleasure to be here. And for y'all who don't understand why he keeps saying Brother Ford, it's because he's pretty, I'm pretty, we're both noobs. And so that's Brother Ford reference there. But no, Brian, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Thanks. So we're going to start off, you know, we're going to ask you, tell us a little bit about who Aaron Ford is, just to set the plate, who Aaron Ford is. And then tell us a little bit, like I said, what does the Attorney General do? Because as I said, many people in our community, we've heard the name, but we really don't know the deeds.
Sure. Well, I guess the best way to describe what Aaron Ford is by referring folks to what how I describe myself on my Twitter feed, and it's by design because it's this order. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I am the Attorney General for the state of Nevada. And that's on purpose and by design. I have been married to my wife for 25 years now. We've raised 3 sons and a nephew. My oldest son is a second-year medical student. My middle son is a junior in college, and my youngest son's a junior in high school. My nephew is a 25-year-old now working back in Texas. We have spent our lives together trying to be the best examples of a husband and a wife, so that my sons know what that looks like, be the best examples of parents so that my sons know what that looks like, but also being the best examples that we can of being folks who are actively engaged in our communities. And so that's who I am as an individual. We're born and raised in Dallas, Texas, been in Las Vegas on and off for about 18 years now. When my wife and I moved here, I like to say at the turn of the century, the year 2000. My wife got a job with a federal judge on the 9th Circuit. We moved here for her job. I got a job with the same judge. And so we ended up staying here for about 3 years. We moved back to Texas in 04 and came back in 07. Pardon me, moved back to Texas in 03 and came back to Vegas in 07. We've been back ever since then. So I'm currently your Attorney General. And I'm sure, Brian, you're going to get to this, but you know, I serve as the top law enforcement officer in the state and the top legal advisor to our state government in the state. Before I was Attorney General, I was the Senate Majority Leader. Before that, I was the Senate Minority Leader. And before that, I was in the majority as a chair of the Natural Resources Committee. And so I've been actively engaged and involved in our community since I've been here, since 2000, and I intend to continue doing so.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to see if I can get the volume increased, so bear with me 1 second. But anyway, first of all, again, that tells us a lot about you. And as I said, we've just had come on Rodney Smith. He's here also. He is another member of the Independent Black Voters on Facebook. Again, as I said earlier, many of us don't understand the position of Attorney General. I've been reading a lot. You've been involved with COVID. You've been a lot involved with making sure that the funds that have come in have gone to the right direction. Some people call you the top cop. Tell us what you really are. Tell us what you do. Tell me where you focus, because the major issues that we talk about in independent Black voters are two things: social justice and equal opportunity.
Absolutely. So day 2 on the job, not day 1. I can't lie, because day 1 was a lot of pomp and circumstance, hugging, hors d'oeuvres, and things of that sort, right? But day 2 on the job, on January 8th, 2019, I had an all hands on deck meeting with everyone in my office. I was in Carson City. We got everybody on the video conference system. And so people in Las Vegas, people in Reno, people in Ely, they all got on the screen, and I introduced myself to them. I introduced myself to them in a number of ways. First of which, like we just did, Brian, by telling them who I was, where I'm from, what I'm about, what drives me, and what informs the way that I act. I had to disabuse them of certain things. The campaign cycle last year was very, very difficult, not last year, but last cycle, as you may recall, Brian. Lots of dog whistles and a lot of racist attacks. And so I wanted to make it a point to let them know who I was. And then I said to them, we have a job to do. And our job in this office is very simple. And if you ask anybody, any 400 of the folks who work in my office, what our job is, they will say to you that our job is justice, period, point blank. Our job is justice, whether we're talking about justice in the criminal sense, criminal justice sense, civil justice sense, administrative issues. You say a word, you can follow it with justice, and that describes what we do. Criminal justice, environmental justice, racial justice, social justice, you name it. That's what we are engaged and involved in. And our focus in the office, I tell them, is what we call our 3 C's. We have 5 now. I added 2 on the year anniversary that I was in office. But the first 3 C's I introduced to them were very simple. The first one was consumer protection. Brian, you referenced this a minute ago about me bringing in monies into the state through lawsuits and settlements, and ensuring that people in our state are well taken care of when businesses have been unscrupulous and have taken advantage of them. And so consumer protection is one of the main areas of focus that we have in my office, including the opioid situation, where I was able to bring in $45 million and distribute it to the legislature so that they can help folks who've been affected by that epidemic. That's the first C. The second C I've talked about already, or mentioned it at least, is criminal justice and reform, ensuring that we have a fair system. Most folks who are objective can look at the system and see that it has not been fair to certain demographics in our state and certain demographics in our country. And so having someone in this seat, the top law enforcement officer of the state, who's willing to speak truth to power from a position of power on criminal justice issues, was something that I told my office and my colleagues that we will be doing. And so criminal justice and reform was the second C. The third C I introduced to them was a comparable one, and it relates to the protection of all of our constitutional and civil rights. Every single one of them, from 1 through, I say, 28 meaning the Equal Rights Amendment, which some are arguing hasn't been ratified, but I'm suing to say that it has been. But every single right that you can think of, including the right to vote, one that was under attack this last go around. And so those are the areas of focus that we have in this office. That's what I do. I represent constituents when we sue companies. I represent the people when we use our criminal justice system to put folks behind bars, and I represent the state government by giving them advice on different issues that they encounter on a day-to-day basis.
Great. See if your volume, if you can raise it a little bit, because I'm hearing you, but you got a great message, and I want to make sure people can hear it. So
I'll try to speak up. My volume is pretty much all the way up though, so I'll try to speak up.
Great. I appreciate it. Same thing here. I'm going to speak up. So you have an election that's coming up. And again, this has been a crazy 2 years. A lot of misinformation, even more than when you were running, is being put out. We have a pandemic that was unfortunately politicized. We have people who are dying in this pandemic. We've had people who have seen their lives turned upside down. And we really need to have people in there who understand what the people are going through. They really understand what's the next steps, because here in Vegas, we seem to be creating the haves and the have-nots. We have a great side in Vegas here, but we have also an area in Vegas where you're seeing that long-term vegans or long-term people who have lived in Vegas are finding it hard to even have a standard of living that allows them to live the American dream, which used to be to buy a house, which used to be to pay your bills, to put your kids through college. What do you think, in your eyes, that Vegas needs to do, or where we need to go to try to make the American dream more accessible to more Americans here in Vegas?
Well, let me back up first off and give you a little bit more insight into who I am, where I'm from, what advises me, and what informs what I do. I did an interview at 4 o'clock today with an eighth grade student named Avery. I won't tell you her last name, but she was interviewing me about where I'm from, and she asked me the question, did you grow up rich or did you grow up poor? I said, well, I didn't grow up rich. And in fact, I grew up closer to poor than anything. And the truth of the matter is, folks look at Aaron Ford in the position he's in right now, and they think that he's maybe born with a silver spoon in his mouth. No, it was in fact pretty tarnished. I'm an individual who grew up trying to understand whether we were going to have water and gas turned on in our house the next day. I'm the one who grew up being told by my mama to fill up the milk jugs with water, because the water's going to get turned off and you got to have water in the milk, water in the refrigerator, right? So that's how I grew up. I grew up trying to get out of tough times and tough neighborhoods. And I transitioned to Texas A&M University, where I experienced some not just that transition from tough times to Texas A&M, but from being a young boy to being a young man, and making some mistakes and making some bad decisions, not mistakes, some bad decisions, you see, right? And so I've experienced life from the perspective of someone who is one of the have-nots, including becoming a single parent in college as a junior. That young son, that my oldest son I told you about, who's in med school, well, he and I came to know each other very well when he was born on June 29, 1993. I was a junior in college. 6 months later, I was a single parent who got on welfare, who got on Section 8 housing, who got on women, infant, and children. Men can get WIC too. You didn't know that, did you? A man who got on food stamps, and who got on Medicaid. And so our hashtag now is from Medicaid to medical school. You see, I understand what it's like to have not, right? To be sure, I understand what it means to have to, but I also try to keep in mind that perspective that we all need to be trying to help someone get to their next level. That's been my experience with government, Brian. My experience with government was that when I was in need, there was a program called Project Upward Bound that gave me extra academic support that ultimately helped me matriculate to Texas A&M. When I was in need at A&M, there was a government assistance called welfare that got me from my position in life to almost dropping out of college to 8 years later having 5 college degrees, including 2 master's degrees, my law degree, and my PhD. You understand? That's what I'm talking about from a government perspective. Having someone in his office who's willing to use this office to help people get to the next level. And so that's what Las Vegas, but Nevada as a whole needs to be thinking about in terms of aspiring to that American dream. I'm gonna be quiet after I say this, but Brian, the American dream is different for different folks. My dream wasn't to buy a house. That wasn't my dream. My mama told me, when you go rent your apartment, you be sure it has gas and water, gas and electricity in the house. She didn't say go buy a house. My dream was to be able to rent an apartment that had electric stove and gas in the house, you understand? And so at the end of the day, we have to recognize that whatever your goal is, whatever you aspire to the height of your life, you should have people in the office who want to assist you and not hinder you from getting there.
Okay. And you know, it's interesting you say that, because right now, you know, 44% of all the 40% of the homeless are Black or African Americans across the United States. So many people are looking for just the ability to keep their head above water and to have a roof under, whether it's renting or owning. And it seems like it's becoming difficult, more and more difficult in Vegas. And like I said, there's a lot of reasons that are associated with this. We have to balance the needs of the renter, the needs of the businessmen with the needs of the communities, because we've talked about this to some of the other candidates. We are in the coming years going to have, I call it a tsunami of people that are going to be homeless. how do we make sure, and from the perspective you look, how do we make sure we don't criminalize homelessness? How do we make sure we don't criminalize poverty and still be able to take the needs of obviously businesses, of homeowners? We don't want obviously a lot of vagrants. Nobody wants them in their neighborhood. Well, on the other hand, what are we going to do? How do we make sure that our laws are not slighted to the point where literally if you're poor, you're being penalized for being poor? Give me your thoughts again as the Attorney General. How do you think we're going to go forward and deal with this coming tsunami?
Well, my answer as Attorney General is different than it would have been 4 years ago when I was Senate Majority Leader. That's because in the Senate, I'm the one who gets to make the laws. I'm the one who gets to formulate the policy to address the issues. The question you asked, Brian, was how do you not criminalize homelessness? Well, that's by not passing laws that criminalize homelessness, right? That's one of the ways you do it. That's not my business anymore in terms of being able to pass laws. My business is to enforce the laws and to use discretion when I do so, right? Understanding that circumstances oftentimes allow for the exercise of discretion. I'll give you an example. When I was at Texas A&M University as a freshman, 18 years old, the drinking age was 21. I was 18. I drank. I got drunk. I was walking home one night on campus, and the police stopped me on campus and ultimately arrested me on campus because I was trying to walk home and I was inebriated. I said it wrong. My wife's gonna get me for that. I was drunk, right? and the option there was that there was some discretion that could have been used though. They didn't have to arrest me at 18 and give me a record that I've been carrying for 28 years since then, right? What they could have done was to follow me home to get my head to Crocker Hall and let me sleep off my drunkenness, right? They could have put me in the back of their squad car and driven me to the north side of campus so I could have gotten upstairs to the 4th floor to my dorm and laid it off. That's what they could have done, but that's not what they did. They utilized their discretion that they had to arrest me at that point, when, by the way, there were a whole bunch of folks on their campus who didn't look quite like me, who likewise were drunk, who did not get arrested, right? And so at the end of the day, what we need are people in office who understand the power of the discretion that the law enforcement system and the criminal justice system has, and to utilize it in a way that is fair and equitable, and not in a way that's prejudicial or more onerous on others, on some than others.
Okay, great. I've got Rodney. He's on here, and I also have Michael. I'm going to let them ask a couple questions before I come back and ask you some more questions. But great answers, and again, thank you for taking the time to let us get a chance to know you. Michael, do you have any questions? Can't hear you. You're mute. Hold on.
Yes, thank you. I was on mute. I'd just like to ask Aaron, if and when you are elected in your next term, re-elected in your next term, what will be your top 3 main goals to accomplish?
Well, I appreciate that, Michael. My goals haven't changed. My goals will be the same. We will have the areas of focus of justice being our job, and we will focus on the 3 C's that I've mentioned to you already. You see, there was and I told you there were 5 now. The other 2 are community engagement and involvement, getting involved and let folks know that we do more than put folks in jail. And so that's why, for example, my investigators passed out turkeys for Thanksgiving, right? Getting engaged and getting involved so people know who you are. And then the other C is constituent and client services, trying to help folks get through their whatever their issues are. But there was a 6th C that thrust itself upon us this last go around. I think Brian referenced it a while ago. That was COVID. And even through COVID, we had to focus on those 5 C's. Our focus didn't change. It became more difficult, to be sure, for us to be able to accomplish those things, but it didn't change, and they won't change this next go around. I will continue to focus on consumer protection. I will continue to focus on criminal justice and reform. I will continue to focus on protecting our constitutional rights, every single one of them, as I've indicated. And I will continue to focus on community engagement and on client and constituent services.
Okay.
I'd like to ask you and kind of go from that. There's another one we look at, we call it economic justice, because again, when you look at the state and you look at the makeup of the people, this is a state in transition that is becoming more of a minority based. The Black community is still sitting right around 13%, but we need to figure out how to have, when I say economic justice, we're all taxpayers, and we need to make sure that the small few don't end up with all the acorns when it comes to opportunity in the state, and that there is an opportunity for all to grow, because there's a direct correlation between economic justice and education. There's a direct correlation between economic justice and social justice. There's a direct correlation between economic justice and economic opportunity. So how do we, I guess, expand the economic justice opportunity throughout, I'd say, Nevada?
Well, again, I think the question will be answered differently if you'd asked me 4 years ago when I was in the state Senate, right, as a legislator who formulates policy. But as the Attorney General, my answer is different. My role is different, and one of the ways that we can ensure that there is more economic opportunity and economic equality, opportunities and equality, is to ensure that the laws as they exist aren't being taken advantage of, or that businesses aren't being unscrupulous in the way that they come in and operate. That there's no redlining, for example, when it comes to giving loans for people who are looking for homes in certain areas, right? That there isn't predatory lending in any event, right? Focusing on our laws to ensure that they are being enforced in, in a way that allows for economic opportunity to be more equal among everyone in our state. And that's something that my office does through the consumer protection focus, where we look at the laws, our consumer protection laws and our deceptive trade practices laws, to see if companies or individuals are violating those. And if so, then we take it upon ourselves to utilize those laws and our ability as the Attorney General's office to enforce those laws and to penalize folks who violate them.
Great. Rodney, I see you're on here. Do you have any questions here for Attorney General Aaron Ford?
Good evening, Attorney General. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, man. But you look, I can't see you, brother. All I see is like a blob right now with your background, man.
Oh, well, actually, I'm driving. I told Brian I'm trying to play Santa Claus a little bit for the family, and the time, and I said I would try to call in, and so trying to be a man of my word, I am in. I apologize for the background. I just not able to take it off right now. But
no, don't worry about it. In fact, just be very careful. You can just drive, and worry about the screen. Just talk, brother. What's the question?
So some years ago, there was a report from ProPublica, and it mentioned that the Metropolitan Police Department was using faulty field drug test kits. And there was an expose with the local news stations, and they even interviewed the lead judge, I think his name was Bonaventure, the DA, as well as the sheriff. And they all knew about these faulty field drug test kits, but Metro still used those faulty field drug test kits. And what was supposed to, even the Metropolitan Police Department's lab notified the leadership that their field drug test kits were faulty. This went on for approximately 30 years of using faulty field drug test kits. And my understanding, as I read the protocol, was once law enforcement arrested someone and found what they believed might be a controlled substance, that they would use these field drug test kits to get an idea of what it was. And if it came back as a positive, then it was supposed to be sent to the Metropolitan Police Department lab, where they would verify what it is. And then after that, that is when the rest of the process of charging the individuals would take place. In the ProPublica article, what actually took place was when Metro would find a substance and they would test it, they would then use it to coerce the suspects to take a plea deal. And some even went to court and lost. Well, it turned out later that these field drug test kits were so faulty that you could put dirt in them and it would blow a positive. But Metro already knew that, but they still used it, and the DA along with the sheriff's department, still use that to go through not just a conviction process, but it was the plea deals that seemed to be most onerous. Well, that was 30 years with a whole bunch of cases. And so from you, I would like to know, A, were you aware of that? And if you were aware of it, what did you do about it?
No, wasn't aware of it. And so haven't done anything about it. This is the first I've heard of it. When did the ProPublica article come out? And was I in office when any of this was taking place?
No, actually, well, you were in the Senate, I believe, but you were not in your current position. And that's one reason why when Brian told me you were on, not knowing whether you knew about it or not, I figured if you did know about it, you probably, had a status. And if you didn't know about it, I wanted you, because I know you don't know everything. Obviously, none of us do.
Sure,
We like to think that we do. But if you didn't know about it, I wanted to apprise you of it so that that's something that I believe that's something that your office should know about and should at least look to see, well, Metro, what did you do? And then the other thing is Metro, according to the article, was supposed to save the data from these arrests as well as the lab results. According to the article and information from insiders, Metro did not do that. So for a suspect to go back and challenge it, there was kind of sort of fuzzy data because it was the original information, but the labs may have actually destroyed those tests. So potentially, there could be people who were forced to take, not forced, but coerced to take a plea deal, which ultimately gave them a felony anyway, for something that wasn't an actual controlled substance. One of the ways that this case came to light, which is kind of interesting, is Metro arrested some guys, I think on the Strip, for drug, I forgot what they actually arrested them for, but when they checked their car, they found a white powdery substance. They tested it in the field drug test kit. It came back positive. They arrested the guys and they tried to get the guys to take a plea deal. The guys hired a lawyer. Now, it took a turn. These gentlemen were purposely selling a white substance for cocaine, I believe, that wasn't really cocaine. So when the field drug test kit blew a positive, they were surprised because they knew it was not an actual controlled substance. And so when Metro tried to coerce them to take a plea deal, that's when they got the lawyer, because they're like, wait a minute, we know this is not real and you're telling us it's real. That's part of what blew the case open, and they won the case because obviously it was not an actual drug. And that's sort of what sort of blew the lid off of this case. And then through Freedom of Information Acts, they got the letter saying that Metro's lab had sent letters to the leadership saying that, hey, our field drug test kits are faulty. As a matter of fact, the company that produced the field drug test kits even sent Metro letters telling them that they were faulty. So that's some background on it for you. ProPublica wrote the article, and they also had local stories here in the news.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, I didn't know about it, hadn't heard about the ProPublica article. Something certainly that I want to read, and but I appreciate you bringing it to my attention.
And so, as a rough guesstimate, they guesstimate that over the 30 plus years, it's roughly 30,000 cases that this might involve. Because I think Metro normally does about 4,000 cases annually, and with field drug test kits.
We'll make sure that, like I say, that information is definitely worth looking at to find out what's going on. And that's one of the reasons too. Is very important who is elected as district attorney, who's elected as sheriff, and then who's elected in your position, because there are rights that need to be wrong. There should be a strategy to not put our community in jail, but to come up with laws that are fair, that actually are designed to keep our community out of jail as much as possible. Would you agree with that, Aaron?
Absolutely. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the criminal justice system should be focusing on trying to ensure that true criminals are the ones who are subjected to the system itself. And so at the end of the day, there are a couple of unfortunate facts that we have to contend with, though, Rodney. And one of them is the Supreme Court has said that cops can lie to you as much as they want, when it comes to try to investigate crimes and whatnot. So I don't know where this falls, along the lines of what Supreme Court precedent says that cops can and can't do. But it doesn't surprise me that the tactic is being used. It certainly is something that has been harmful to the community. If you says been used over 30 years, and I just real quickly Googled the article, and I think I found it. It looks like it's from 2016, and I'm going to take a gander at it. But it's part and parcel of what I've said about criminal justice and reform, ensuring that we have a system that is fair and that is reliable and that folks can trust in. And Rodney, what you've just detailed is an example of some reasons why people don't trust government, generally speaking, but particularly law enforcement.
Yes, sir. And I did a follow-up. I actually called the gentleman who wrote the article. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. And I think he actually got some award for doing this investigative journalism. I followed back up with it in 2018 because my concern was, is Metro still using these faulty field drug test kits? And at that time, he said that they were. When I went to follow back up in 2020, I could not get any information one way or the other. So I would like to think that they're no longer using them, but I couldn't get any information to confirm it one way or the other. So that was what I wanted to ask you about, and well, I guess now inform you about.
I'm going to ask you, now you're running against a candidate who is very anti, when it comes to COVID, it's a pandemic. And in pandemics, we literally have to make decisions that are sometimes not nice. They're not things that people want to do. But in a pandemic, we've lost a lot of life. We've lost revenue. We have a person that you're running against who, in many ways, has, I'm going to say, has hurt our push towards trying to get this state back on its feet. Is that correct?
Well, I'm going to fix your nomenclature a little bit. I'm not running against anybody. I'm running for the office of Attorney General. Okay. That candidate isn't even running against me. That's a true statement. But I'm running for the office of Attorney General, just like I did last go round. I'm running for the people, so that the people have someone in this office who's looking out for them first. But to be sure, as you've indicated, one of the candidates, or the only candidate I know of so far that is announced, has taken a contrary view of what was necessary and appropriate and what was constitutional from a COVID perspective, and has lost on every single case with the exception of one. And that case was a coattail case where that candidate didn't even win the case. It was someone else who won it, and there wasn't even really an argument that needed to be had on that candidate's case, because the previous case had already been decided on the merits. And so in any event, the point I'm making is I'm here to protect every constitutional right from 1 through 28, every single one of them. And during a time of COVID, those lines get blurry. There's no question. But we've always endeavored to be on the right side of the Constitution. And if the court tells us that you're wrong on it, then so be it. We will fix that. And that is what has happened on one occasion, where the court said that you can't have more people in a movie theater than you let go to church. Okay, I get it. And so we will enforce that as the law of the land. But every other case that opponent has brought so far, has not prevailed, because we have in fact been on the right side of the restrictions of the Constitution when it comes to the restrictions that our governor has had to implement in order to protect lives and to save our state. It's a tough balance, absolutely a tough balance, impossible by some people's mentions, but it's an endeavor that we've had to undertake over the last 2 years. One that I'm honored and proud to have been engaged and involved in, because it's helped to steer our state through times of tumult. And you know, at the end of the day, reasonable minds can disagree. Lawyers disagree all the time on cases, and there's only one entity out there that's the final arbiter of who's right and who's wrong, and that's the courts. And the courts have said unequivocally, with the exception of one case, as I've indicated, that we've been on the correct side of the law and the Constitution when it comes to the restrictions that the governor has put in on COVID-based issues.
And that's well said. You're right. You're running for the position of Attorney General. You're not running against anyone. But I want to state this again. If I'm correct, you won last year by you won by roughly about 5,000 votes. Is that correct?
That's right. 4,500 votes, about half a point.
Yeah, and that's why it's important that the independent Black voter give people a chance to see you, because unfortunately we're in some dire times at this point where we have many people who are pushing false narratives. We have many people who are not looking at factual information. Right. And if we aren't educated voters, again, I consider myself independent, nonpartisan. I look at the facts, just the facts. I look at what's happening. But I can say in today's time frame, we are in perilous times, folks, because historically on the midterms, it's low voter turnout. And with low voter turnout, many times we end up with people that we regret for the next time period. So we at the independent Black voters, are attempting to educate our community, all communities, on who the candidates are, who are the ones that bring the needed assets to make sure that all people have opportunity. We have to fight misinformation. We have to look at the candidates on their body of works, and we have to decide who is going to bring the best opportunity for Nevadans here in Nevada. So that's why we invited you over here, Attorney General Ford, was so that our people can get the chance to meet you. Now, I'm going to ask you in this, as we wrap this up, give us your thoughts on why people should vote for you. Give us your thoughts on why people should vote, how important it is to vote as we look to end this conversation.
Well, I'm gonna take that last question first, that latter question first, because you talked about how close this last race was. 4,500 votes, a half a point, not even 1 point, was the amount that I won by. So every vote, virtually every vote counted in order for us to be in this position. Now, what would have happened had I not won this case, won this seat? Someone else would have been in it. Someone else with a different mentality about the right to vote, for example. And when we saw what happened with the last election, where people were lying about mass widespread voter fraud and cavorting and siding with those who were perpetuating that big lie, I was there as the head of this office to push back on that and to litigate those cases and to prevail on those cases, every single one of them. Right, with the exception of one where we agreed to by saying we want to keep some polling positions open, polling locations open because of some faulty machines. But the point I'm making is, if the other person were in this office at that time, that wouldn't have been the outcome. There likely would have been an alignment with those who were lying about the case. Right, and it's the same with the governor's race, and it's the same up and down. If it weren't for us being in this case, what would have happened after me being in this office? What would have happened after George Floyd's murder? Would you have had someone in this particular position ascribing to this notion of improving relationships between law enforcement and the communities that we serve? In that case, particularly the Black community. I was proud to be able to be in the intersection of being a Black man and in law enforcement in the top spot, to be able to help facilitate agreements and understandings in that regard. That's how we were able to pass a law that has limited the use of no-knock warrants in our state, so that what we saw happen to Breonna Taylor what is less likely to happen here in our state. That's how we were able to pass in this state unanimously the ability to give my office the ability to do pattern and practice investigations into law enforcement offices or departments that are alleged to be engaging in discriminatory behavior. That's through efforts that this Attorney General has. That's why it's important to vote. You want someone in this office who's going to always look out for Nevada families first. That's what I have done. That's what I will continue to do. I love this job. It's one that I want to keep. And that's why I'm working so hard in order to try to retain it through trying to reach out to voters such as yourself, Brian, and your constituency. And so, hopefully that answers your question sufficiently. If we mess around here, though, we can see a repeat of times past where the other party takes over. In my estimation, the other party being the party who does not have our best interest in mind, and then not having the ability to adequately represent the needs of your constituency, Brian.
Thank you. So I'm going to close this, like I said, first by thanking you, Attorney General Aaron Ford, for coming in and taking the time, because time is valuable. I have some words, again, as the independent Black voters. We are very, very focused on the Black community, but we realize that as the tide rises for the Black community, it rises for all communities. Many of the issues that we talk are directly related to all communities. Voting is a right and a privilege. When you don't vote, you end up with whatever someone else dictates to you. We are in trying times, unfortunately. America is more divided than I've ever seen in my 60 years of lifetime here on this planet. We are divided. Unfortunately, there are forces that are pushing hate. There are forces that are pushing misinformation. There are forces that do not want to have a melting pot with equal opportunity for all. We must vote, folks. If we say we have a president, oh, now we're not going to vote next election, then we lose. If we do not become educated voters, we must know what our objectives are. We must fight to make sure that they are discussed. What do we want? Equal opportunity, social justice. We want a level playing field with opportunity of all, especially when it comes to equal level playing fields for Black America. We built this country. We built this country. Our forefathers, their sweat, they built this country, and we deserve to have the American dream going forward. But folks, it will not happen unless we vote. It will not happen unless we are educated voters. So the independent voters, our vote is not free. We're going to endorse you. We're going to endorse you again for your second term. We endorsed you for the first one. And we look forward to working with you to see if we can help you to win a second term.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support and the endorsement. It means the world to me. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm going to